So team, welcome to the day one for the new QTP training batch of December 1st, 2011. Thank you for being here, and here is the schedule for what we're going to do. Over the next 15 live webinars, the whole intent is to go through the most significant concepts of HP Quick Test Professional as a tool and provide you the much needed information on the various aspects of it. All right. So I typically don't start with the presentation in mind. However, I have few slides that I want to walk through because this is the most commonly asked questions. And then I want to also show you some of the video library content that I've built over a period of time. All right. So here is a short presentation team that I put together. Should not take more than 3-4 minutes. Primarily, I'm trying to show you how can I give you an overview based on the top frequently asked questions. The number one is, what is the core focus of this training? The core focus team, though I'm listing the topics here, the intent is how can it help you either in job search and interviews or implementing the concept of QTP as an automation testing tool at your project levels. All right. So even if you're a beginner, even if you're someone who's already working in the IT industry in the area of testing, or using QTP, this is a one course that fits all. The topic focus is VB scripting, because unless you know VB scripting, your knowledge is very superficial and you won't get recognized. But just VB scripting won't do. We need to know the concepts of descriptive programming, why and where to use, the foundation levels of object repository and so on. But most importantly, how do we apply all of these concepts into a project in our real life scenario? And that's done through various projects that I take in automation frameworks. So we plan, we design, we build and maintain these different types of frameworks from ground up. So you take the exact way you try and practice either on an demo application that I show you, or you do it on your own applications if you're in a project, and that will be the focus. All right, team. The next thing that comes to us is basically what are the prerequisites. So number one, team, the prerequisites is the fact that you need to have some amount of patience, because it takes time to set things up. It takes time to follow the instructions, install the tool, make it work, and get started. But once you get started, you will be able to flow with things. So while these sessions last 15 live webinars in about 4 weeks, depending on the amount of time you spend on the training, it can take you anywhere between 1 to 2 months to get to a really good mastering level on this tool. All right. The next one is there are questions in terms of which is a chosen model. Is it the live or video? What I would recommend is to visit my website. You will see a live versus video link there and watch that overview. But typically it's the same content irrespective of you attend live or you do videos. The only primary difference is you are attending part of the whole training through these 15 live sessions. Okay. These 15 live webinars is a part of the whole course, and you are attending the live sessions. You are trying to interact with me as the session goes on. All right. At the same time, these sessions also get recorded, hosted, and you're provided access for either of the participations. Then once you sign up, once you confirm and join, you get a lot of things, but most importantly, you get something called as a group invite. You will be part of the 1,000+ members in my QTP eLearn group, where there are a lot of things being discussed. So your technical questions, your project related, your interview questions, that's the forum to be in. Then where do the videos, how to watch these videos, how are they hosted? So let me give a quick overview of a new way I'm building this folder structure. So unlike earlier, I have divided them into 2 parts. The first part will be the live batch recordings. For example, these sessions that happen, for each batch, there are about 15 to 20 videos that are hosted in one folder each. So you'll be given access to 3 of the latest few batches plus the ongoing batch. So that's almost about 60 videos by itself. Apart from these, there is one mega folder that's called the topic based recording. primarily over a period of time, I've collected a series of the whole methodology of how QTP should be learned into these 60 plus videos. That's almost about 50 hours. So it starts with the basics of VB scripting. Then it goes to some of the simpler but not regularly used things called actions and checkpoints. More importantly, functions. How do you interact with Excel? But then you get into how to create different types of data-driven framework, either using Excel read-write or data tables or arrays and so on. Then we go into one of the most important topics about descriptive programming. How do you work with it? We then look at how to manage this descriptive programming or different types of dynamic applications using things like child objects, Mercury device replay, and so on. We then talk about how do we work with environment variables, error handling, recovery scenarios, and so on. After we have done this part, and this is the folder structure, team, I'm telling you how the videos are sorted out. You get into keyword driven framework. How can we create a very simple one using shared object repository? But most importantly, how do we create a more complex one using descriptive programming? And then we go into hybrid, different type of load and run action framework, and the overview. Finally, towards end, you will see the other topics like database testing, .NET Factory, file system object, how do you work with XML. So there are various things, team. So if someone is looking at end-to-end, I would suggest just take this one folder and watch everything. Towards the end, there will be one folder which will contain what are the typical automation challenges that you face in your real life. How do you prepare for interviews or your project? How do you try and implement them? And a good overview about frameworks. So typically, if you watch some of these, at least the core concept of this, you are at a very, very advanced level on this tool. The whole point is to try and make this learning easier. And here is where those videos are hosted. So you'll see different batch videos out here. And now this is the folder. That's the mega folder of QTP recorded topics. You would see all the videos in that order. So once you sort it by name, you can play any video, just open it up. All you need is a simple plugin called Microsoft Silverlight, and you can start to watch those videos. All right. So you can play them in full screen, and you'll see that the quality is almost as good as you're doing it on your own machine. All right, team. So that's a quick overview of what I wanted to give on what you get with your welcome pack. So where was that? Let's see quickly. I think I'm here, line 6. Okay, there you go. So that's the videos that you'll get access to. So participants who choose to be in the live sessions, you'll also get access to these webinars as they go on. But primarily, videos is the thing. You attend webinars, live, interact or not, because most of your questions will come when you practice, and that's where you use the group to interact with all the others. All right. You'll also be given how to install QTP versions and how to work with it. There is a technical support team that I'm creating just because there are hundreds of participants joining my training every month now. So I'm creating a structure of technical supports. That will be good. So even if you cannot attend the live batch, missing 1 or 2 classes or the whole session doesn't matter, because everything is recorded and hosted for you to watch. You currently have a 200-day access from the time you subscribe. The only reason I put a timeline there is because you know that you have to try and complete something in a certain period of time. If you need an extension by a month or so, I'm not too stringent about it. But if you want to repeat it, there is a small repeat fee to get it extended from the 200 days. Also, there are offers of QTP and Selenium together, but I would recommend that you don't learn both the tools together. Take one tool, spend about 4 or 5 weeks, master it, then move on to the other tool. So if needed, I'll give you the extension on the videos and all that, so don't worry about that. But to get the offer, you can make a payment together for both of them. For all of this team, just visit either qtpelearn.com or seleniumelearn.com, then you should be good. So that's about the overview that I wanted to give you, team, about the training. Any questions regarding the training and what comes with it and so on, please contact me offline. But I just want to continue with the core agenda of our today's session. All right, team. So far so good, everyone. Team, all good? All right, cool. So now what I'm doing is, as a beginning level for each of the batches, there are lots of scripts that we generate. We write a lot of code. We develop the whole frameworks and concepts. So for our December 1st batch, I've created a new folder called D1, and you will be given access to all the files that get stored in this folder. All right. For example, the last batch that I just completed, the November 3rd, all the files for that batch are all out here. Okay. How do we go about doing each and everything? Now, in here is where we're going to start with our main topic, the fundamental agenda. So team, one request is whenever you get a chance, do visit my YouTube folder and watch the basic videos on QTP. You'll see QTP tutorial 1, 2, and 3. Go to youtube.com/QTP elearn and watch these basic videos. The reason I'm saying is some of the concepts like the record and run, it's not so significant in our real life, all right, but it is important to know as a concept, how does it work, why does it work, and so on. I will not go at the same depth so that we can directly jump into creating a data driven framework from scratch, and that will be our focus. How do we typically go about creating that framework? All right, Tim, just give me 1 second please. All right, Tim, sorry, I'm back. Just had to grab a glass of water. All right. So now let's start with working with QTP. So to do that, what I'll do is I'll take a pre-built template from an old batch and put it in here. Now we'll start to work. The reason I love to start with a template is very simple. Once I put my thoughts together in a simple Excel, it is very easy for me to then move forward and explain things with you. So what we are doing is, let me talk to you about automation at a high level. But before that, what I want to show you is this application. Let's assume that you are part of a team or you are trying to automate a project which is similar to this. Not necessarily that it is as simple as what you see, but the concepts are the same. The approach is the same. You may just have more functionality, a little more different types of fields and so on. That's the only difference. For example, this is an application that once I show you a simple application, our focus will then be to learning and mastering QTP, VBScript, and so on. It's then easy to apply it on more complex applications as we go forward. All right. So the first thing that I want to give you is an overview of the functionality of this application, because as automation engineers, forget about automation engineers, as even test engineers, one of our prime focus is the fact that you are masters at understanding the functionality of any application. That is our beginning point. So if you have something in your project, that means that you know in and out of what is correct and what is wrong. The reason is, unless you're a master of the application, how will you know what is working right and what is working wrong? That's the reason you need to know this. And here is a quick overview of what this application does. It's a simple gas mileage calculator. What it does is, let's say that a user comes in here and enters that his current odor, his or her current odometer reading on his vehicle is about 15,000 miles. And let's say the last one where he measured was 12,000 miles. And then he put in, let's say, about 35 gallons of fuel during this period, from where he started to where he's ending. All right, that's the fuel consumption. And let's say that his gas price was about 4.12. Now, when the user clicks on calculate, the functionality of this simple part of this application is that it must give these values back. All right. So what is it that we have to do as test engineers? We have to do a lot of things. I have to first verify if these fields are there, if the user is able to enter inputs into it, if the user is able to click on calculate, and then see if finally the results are coming up, and if they're coming up, are they correct or not? That is the intent, and that is the process that we want to automate and test. Okay, but before I get to automation, how do we do it manually? Typically what we will do is we would go to the URL, we would start entering details, we would perform this operation as a user does of this application and see if it is working or not, right? Once you know if that is working or not, then you can say yes, it is working, or no, it is not working. Team, quick pause. Can you all hear me okay at this point? All right, because I just got a pop-up saying my audio quality has degraded on go to training, so I wanted to verify. All right, sounds good. So now, why do we want to automate it? So here is the bottom line of automation team. If I am a manual test engineer, in the sense I am given the uh, project to test this calculator net application. Okay, so what will I do? I will go there, I will take one set of data and test it and see if it is a pass or a fail, right? But what happens is, if I test it for one set of data, that means everything is good? No. You will have users who come from different backgrounds. They have different types of readings and they may enter different types of values. So you have to repeat this process and test it for different types of input values. And the more the number of test data, this is called basically a test data, what you're trying to test the application on, the more confidently you can say that this application seems to be working correctly. So you would, with what confidence? I'm a 90% confident, I'm a 99% or a 99.9% confidence. That is the idea. But if I need to do this manually, every time I have to go enter the values, get the output, verify it and so on, it is a laborious, time consuming process, plus added risk that when I'm doing this manually every time, there are chances that I make errors. And that is the issue. Time's getting wasted, too long to test it out, and manual errors can happen. So, and bigger thing is, every time, not necessarily that we test it out one time and we let it go, right? Because if calculator net, the application is changing, the functionality of how it works changes, you have to go back and see if with the new changes, your old functionality is working correctly or not. So you have to repeat everything again and again. That means there are three fundamental criteria for automation. Number one is it efficient? If a manual user does something in 10 hours, am I able to cut this down to something lesser than 10 hours? Probably 1 hour. All right. Is that there? Is it efficient? Okay. Can I reuse it? What do I mean? I don't want to spend 20 hours developing automation scripts and then realize that only once I learned, did it. So what I did is I spent 21 hours in total for what I could have done manually 10 hours. But I keep on repeating it. 10 into 10 times is 100, but now it will be 20 for creating and 10 hours for each 1 hour run. That's just 30. So that's where your real essence of automation is coming. You're able to reuse it whenever needed. The last and very important thing is it is accurate. Okay. Are the results accurate? What is the point of building efficiency? It's working fast, super fast, everything is doing good. I can reuse it anytime, but it fails more often than it gives me correct results. What is the point then? You're not able to trust what it's doing. So you have to switch back to manual testing. That is the reason these three are the fundamental driving blocks for any automation. So if you have a question in terms of should I automate this or not, here is the formula for it. If each of these are valid, not one of them, everyone should meet its criteria, then only be able to do it. We will look at these things more practically, team, as we move forward, but that's the concept. So now, how do we use this tool called HP Quick Test Professional to do the same process? Primarily what happens is, if I open QTP, and I open the application after QTP. So team, remember to open your IE application after you open QTP. All right. Now I can go in here and create something called as a new test. This is a simple UI, team. Just like any other Windows application, you'll see menu bar and all the other details. All I have to do is go to a new test. Either click here or go to your file, go to new and say test. Everything that we do belongs to some tests in QTP. Okay, tests are basically that here is what I want to test. So I can do something, store it for a future use. What does this do? The most important part of this test is something called as your expert view. This is where we are. All right. Here is the white background. So almost like a notepad where you can go and start typing anything. All right. Now, what I could do, typically, predominantly what people have done is that they would go to that website, calculator.net, whatever. All right. Go to that URL, hit the record key here, And the instruction we are doing when we do this is, I am telling QTP, you are an automation tool. You're saying that what I do manually, you can automate it, but show me how you're doing it. So team, another quick check. Sorry about this. Okay, audio is bad. All right, let me check, please. So team, can you hear me now? And is my voice breaking, or do you still hear an echo? Clear? Good. All right. All right, so now let's continue. So where I paused is that I was explaining about this record process. So the instructions, it is all about giving instructions to QTP. Either you do a record or you start doing something on your own, okay? When we do record, I'm saying QTP, I don't know how you do things. I don't know what's happening in your mind at the background, but follow what I'm doing and try and replicate that. That's the instruction. So click on record, click on OK, forget about this. Set it to the record and run test on any open browser because I already have IE open here. Click on OK. Once you do that, QTP gets into a mode, tries to understand what is happening. So if I go to this field and like earlier, I type 15,000 and hit a tab or go on to the next field, you would see a line of code getting generated. So for everything that we do, QTP understands what we are trying to do. All right. And let's say I put some values out here and then click on calculate. At the end, you would see that the results have come up out here. Okay. So now what QTP has done is it has understood what are the steps I performed. So if I hit on stop, and if you look at what things have been generated, this is your primary VB script code. All right. What is a VB script code? It is just like a translator in between you and QTP as a tool. Okay. So if you are a person who's trying to automate this tool, QTP can only understand one language called VB script. You now have to learn this VB script to communicate effectively with QTP. All right. That is the reason VB script is very essential. When you do a record, QTP generates everything by itself. But is this the way we work in real life? No. Why? Because you have to be in control of what's happening. You have to be able to design logics around things. All right. Basic code generated. So now if I just say save this as, it will save this as a test, and I can go and put it into our D1 folder and call this as calc1. Just a version and say this calc1. Now, if I run this test team, okay, go back to the root URL where it initially saw that these were the fields, and I run this test, QTP will perform the same operation again, and it goes very quickly from each line. So each line tells QTP what to do, how to do. Two important things in this team. There are only two important things in every statement that you see that is related with something with the application. The first one is, where does QTP has to do a certain activity? And then the second one is, what does it have to do? The where part and the what part. Where part is basically saying, is it the edit field? Is it the button we need to go and click? Is it the link that I need to click? Do I need to select something from a drop down list in an application and so on? That's the where part, identifying that element on which we want to perform something. Then once we've identified where, then I say what to do. Do you want to click? Do you want to select? Do you want to enter a text? Do you want to verify some values? That is the what part. Okay, your where part team is basically all about the objects and object repositories. All right. Now, how do we typically do the same process instead of doing it through this record and run? What is the other way? The other way is to develop it in a systematic manner using a framework concept. Okay, and here is my data-driven framework plan. All right, my plan is basically, what is it that I wish to achieve? How will I go about doing it in a systematic manner instead of using a record and run? The way we will do it is this the only steps, always the same steps, irrespective of the project or what a requirement is? No, but this is an approach, one of the approaches that you should take. Then you can customize it. So the first thing out here is I've listed all these things. Okay, now I'm saying First, let's identify what is it that we want to do. How do we want to test something, and what is our scenario? So for that, we have to create something called as a plan. What are the steps that we perform manually, which application, browser version, and so on. Okay, high level test plan. Then what is the scenario? The scenario is we going into that application and entering these values, clicking on calculate, then we have to verify them. That's our overall process. The third one is called test data. All right, but we learned early on that unless we repeat the same things for multiple sets of data, I cannot with confidence say that this application works correctly. So how can I do that? You prepare a sample set of test data. Say, what is your starting miles? What are your end miles? What are the inputs that we will take out here? Okay, these are my inputs. So let me color this with a different background. Here are my inputs, and at the end I want the outputs to come here and say what were the miles per gallon that the application gave, and is that a correct value? Then result is a pass or a fail. Okay, manually I can go take each input, put it there, get the values, compare it using a Windows calculator or a handheld one, and say pass or a fail. But that's the reason we are moving away from it, because of ERA, efficiency, reusability, and your accuracy. All right, so to do this, I have prepared a test data saying that here's my sample test data. Now that is your first step, and we've done about 75%. Why 75? Why not 100? You might want to come back and update some more things here. You might want to change something in your logic. Okay, those things you can never say 100% until you get there, but at least 75% is a good mark. The second thing is answering that where part. How does QTP answer this where part? When we did a record, QTP does something. It learns all about the objects. Okay, objects are nothing but what does QTP look at in that? Is it a browser? Is it a page? Is that a button? Is that a link? Or what? What is that object? Once it knows what that object is, it learns something about that object. Okay, so it gives it something called as a logical name. We will see that very soon. And then it says that I have identified this object. There are identifications, like you identify, let's say, an individual by an email address or a cell phone number or a social security number. What does QTP use to identify? That is number one. Then we can get to the what part. Once I've identified, what do we want to do? And those are called as our methods. All right. Objects have a class that they belong to, which is basically saying what type of an object is it. Is it a browser? Is it a car? Is it a cell phone? Is it a human? What is it? And then in that I can say what next, what next, what is the object within it. Within a car I have an engine, I have seats, and so on. So that's the concept of hierarchy. There is nothing at all to be confused on these topics, team. Okay, very simple. But anytime anyone hears these things for the first time, they always have questions. What does it mean? But let's explore them practically. That's the way you're going to master things. Okay, so QTP has done this. Now I'm saying as part of a regular plan of automation, we will do the same thing. How? Let's save this old one. Forget it. Now I'll create a new test, blank. Okay, so to do that, what I need to use is something called as your object repository. I briefly spoke about object, but if I teach QTP that here is my where part, here are the objects, how do you want to identify and store them somewhere? Just write down notes. Okay, here is the name I'll give to this object. Here is the class. Here are the properties so that I can identify it. That's where all this is stored in a place called as the repository. That's your object repository. Click on this icon and it will open up something called as your object repository. All right. Here is where when we do a regular record, QTP does two things. Adds the object to the repository, writes the code corresponding to what we did. All right. Now let's go in here and see what are these objects. Here is my application. What are the objects, team? Where are we trying to do something? We are trying to do something here. Here is the first where, second where, third where, fourth where, fifth where. Once we click on calculate, then we come to results. That we will look at it a little later. But here are the 5 objects that I want. I will add them to the repository. How? I can do a record, but no, in real life, I would love to add them myself. Why? I'll show you. So how do you first add them? Click on this add objects to repository button out here. Do you see this? The cube icon with a plus, that is the icon to add your objects. Click on it. Your mouse pointer will change to being a hand, but if you don't have the application in front of you, you click something, it will try and add that Excel object as a Windows object and so on. Cancel this, minimize all your windows, bring up your application, then bring up your QTP. Now try and do the same process. Click on add objects. The only thing that is open then is my application. All right. So minimize all the windows, open QTP or open the application, open QTP, and then add the objects. Now let's click on the object. Once I click on it, QTP will tell me that, hey, I found a browser. Inside the browser, there is a web page, and there inside that there's a web table and another web table, and then inside it web edit. That's the hierarchy of how it is identified. Okay, it is telling that basically to identify where you are, I have to give the apartment number, I have to give the street name number, I have to give the city code, I have to give the zip code, this state, the country, the continent, everything. But sometimes, do I need to give everything? If I say US and then I say Los Angeles, I know it's automatically there in California. I don't have to give the state, correct? And if I say US and I say the zip code, that is fine too, but I still have to give the door number and apartment number. So some of these will not get added. It will eliminate because I don't need to know the complete hierarchy. So when you click on OK, see what happens. It adds it to something called as a browser. How do we know this is a browser object? Because once you click on it, you will see the class here. And that's exactly what we saw when we did the first test. Let's open the first test through the Windows Explorer. If you want to see the code that we generated, click on that folder, go to Action 1, right click on the script.mts file and say open with a notepad. And then you see the exact code that got generated. There are other things that get generated at the end of it. You can ignore them. But here was the main first step. What does it show? Browser and then some information here. Page, some information here. Web edit, some information here. Right? So that's exactly how it's stored here. Browser, the name here. Page, the name here. Then there's a web edit, the name here. Okay. If someone wants to look at this code and understand what is happening, yes, US COD reading. What is this COD reading? Something QTP learned to identify that object and it stored that as a name. Okay. It's like saying that I will identify one of my participants in the session by saying, what's your city? Which city are you in? But that doesn't mean that I know you exactly. But if I use your first or last name or your telephone or email, then I'm uniquely pointing out to you. Correct? So that's how I will say the names of these objects can be tricky. Once you add them, unlike recording, when you add it, you have the direct ability to go and change it as and when. So I can say out here that this is my end miles. That is the name I give to that edit field. This field out here, team, is an edit field because you can go in and type some information, and these are called as web edits. That is the class it belongs to. How do you master them? Just continue to do what I'm showing. Over the next period of 10 sessions, 15 sessions, you'll automatically master the simple concepts. Beginning is a step, but then it becomes clearer as we go along. Okay, so now I'm saying it is end miles. Now hit a tab or come out of it, and then that is stored there. All right. How does QTP identify it? Using these description properties out here. This portion is a must to learn, but we will come to this at a later point. We have to go very, very deep into it. For now, all I'm interested in is the name of these objects and the hierarchy in which it's getting added. All right. So for now, forget about how it's identified. Let's assume that it is identified. I am interested in the names for now and what class they belong to. Okay. One object added. Now let's click on plus and add the second one. And similar hierarchy, but it's got a different name that it is automatically allocated. That's called the logical name that QTP generates, and we will change that to something that we feel more comfortable with. Why? So that someone reading through the code in your team is able to easily see what is happening. What is this line doing? When we write the code, you will see how easy it is to recognize that compared to looking at this piece of code. Then we can see the advantages. Team, am I making sense? Is everyone comfortable with what we are doing so far? Shalini, we are not coming to descriptive programming yet. We will come to it very, very aggressively. A whole keyword-driven framework will be developed around it using absolute descriptive programming. We will come to that later, not today. Let your questions be related with what we have done so far in the training team. That way, it is easy for us to go together. Let me see another question. For some reason, I'm not getting code generated. Only thing gets generated is window open, window activate. The reason, Namrata, is that your QTP is a software tool that is installed on your system. Your system has security settings. It has a specific operating system and so on. You have to tweak the settings so that you give control to QTP. That QTP, now you can perform some high risk activities on different things on your machine. So those things, as part of that welcome pack, as I mentioned, you will get that access specifically as to how to install and so on. All those installation instructions will be sent out there. So team, comfortable so far? Brahma, again, we are not going into that portion. My focus is on what we are doing. Anything significant other than this, please come back later. What is the significance of keyword view? Nothing, zilt. It is useless thing. Why? Okay, team, let me give you a very fundamental, most important thing about this thing. There are two ways of this tool. 90% of the QTP population knows two things or few things. They know, let me close this, something called as a keyword view. They know something called as actions. They know something called as checkpoints, and they know something called as record and run. All right. If you go and put these on your resume and say that you're strong at this, you're one among that 95% of the population or 90% of QTP population. QTP population worldwide, not everyone who's there in those projects. Okay. If you want to get to that cream, get away from actions, get away from checkpoints, get away from record, get away from this useless keyword view. Why? You have to know VBScript, descriptive programming, and frameworks. All right. Cool. So team, continuing in the same direction of how we were adding, hey, this is fine, but how about naming these things also? What is this? Browser. Okay, let's name this as IE because that seems to be the browser we're using. Okay. How about this? This seems to be the page. Oh, okay, the web page. So how about saying this page 1? What if I get more pages, then what will happen? So I'll say this is page 1. All right. What was this end miles? What was this pointing to? We added the object, but now I don't remember. So let's say click highlight an application and show you a blinking icon on that object. The same with start miles, say highlight an application, it'll blink on that object. Now I have 3 more objects left. Let's add them quickly. Click on this and say, okay, now go and change it. What was it? Gas. So I'll just say this is gas. All right. Now let's add one more, which is that price, gas price. So I'll call this as price. I am giving names that is easy for me and my team to look at when they read the code. That is the intent. Even when I come back a couple of months down the line, if I want to understand what is happening in my code, that's the reason it is important. When you develop these scripts, you're not doing it for one time. Now I have something called as image calculate. Why? This thing out here, QTP has identified that is not actually a button. It is the image. So if you right click, you can say this save picture as and so on. That's an image. Depending on what that object is, QTP identifies it different, gives it a specific class name and writes the name. Have we mastered this aspect of classes, objects, identification and methods? No, we are getting there now. Now what I did, team, those 5 significant objects that I need, I have added them to my repository. So I'll say about 50% done. Why? I may need more objects as we go along. Okay. What we did is we've identified them and we added the objects to the repository and assigned logical names. Logic names that QTP gives automatically to these objects are called as logical names. We go and change them to something which is more logical to us. Will QTP recognize? Now we'll see that. So we have also done this part. In fact, identification we have identified, but we have added only some of those objects. Now we're saying let's write the basic code for the test scenario. But before I write the code, let me think about what is it that I want to do. Let's write it here. I'll say enter the values into the application for the 4 edit fields. Pure English, simple for us to understand. Next, I will say click on the calculate button. Easy for us to understand. Then verify if results are coming up. Good. Verify if the result is correct. All right. These are the main steps, team, that I need to perform. So how do we write the code for this? Like QTP generated it automatically, how do we write our own code? Now it gets very simple and very interesting. The first thing we need to do is let's save this test, because we're making changes. Keep saving it, otherwise this tool can crash like any other application and you may lose changes. So I'm saving it as calc2 and click save. But as soon as I'm trying to save, QTP gives me a information tab here and says, hey, there's some problem. It gives me a red exclamation, says there's some problem. These are basically syntax error. Syntax error is basically you want to communicate with QTP. And I said that there is a middle layer out here called VB script. So if I want to speak directly in English to QTP, it won't understand. I have to give it as VB script statements. So for each of these, I need to write code. But then how do we take care of this? I want to keep them, but I don't want QTP to start to understand them as VB script. So for your comments, which is your notes, all you have to do is select the line, either go to that line and click on this icon or say Control M, and that whole sentence will be treated as something which is not a VB script statement for QTP. Don't worry about that statement. It is for my own understanding. See, how many times am I saying this word? The way we develop this is a lot to do with how will I understand or read this code, or my team will understand, or when we get to maintenance after a couple of months, how can we go back and easily identify what we're doing? That is the reason. Once I comment them using Control M as a keyboard shortcut or using this, they're no longer executable. Now can I save it? Let's click on save. Now I don't get that information error anymore because QTP is identified. So the first thing, how can I comment the whole block at a time? Just enter, let's say this is the text that you want to enter, okay? Just select everything that you want using your Shift and your arrow key. Hit Control M, Control Shift M to uncomment. Use these two icons to do the same, all right? How do you master it? Do it 3 or 4 times, you'll automatically learn to do it. So team, everything good so far? Shall we go ahead with this? Now, how do we enter values? I'm saying first the where part, then the what part. How do we do this? To do the where part, I will keep my object repository to one side. Okay, this is where I said what are the names for the objects and how they're identified. Okay, now let's see where this is. I want end miles, so I'll say web edit, right? Web edit and end miles. So I'll start to write. This is a comment again. So Control M. I'll say web edit and I will say end miles. But for QTP to understand this statement, it will try and search for something like this in the test objects. If it has to do that, it has to start from the root, the main parent object, and then go to what is under that, and then what is under that, and that way only it's identifying. So to do this, instead of writing it this way, I will start with this first object that I see. What do you see? Browser. So I'll write browser. As soon as you hit the open brackets, IE automatically comes up. Why? Because QTP found that there's only one object which is of type browser. How can you see that? You can see class browser. You can see this icon out here. Do you see any other icon with this anywhere down? No. It has got only one browser and it has identified that. What is the class name and what is the name of that specific object in the repository? Okay. Class name, name of the object. For example, now I don't need this, right? If I change this IE to IE1, all right, you will notice that your code that you generate out here will change automatically. All right, we will come to this correlation once we write the whole statements. Okay, now I will say inside this browser called IE dot tells me that what do I want to do. All this brick icons team, the green brick with the motion sign that you see is basically saying you're performing something, you're throwing something, you're doing something. And that tells me on browser, these are the various things I can perform. And as you go on each of them, it will show you what. Do you have to master everything? No, but you have to be aware that there are some things that you could do. Okay, there are some things that you could do. How do you master them? As we continue to use some of these features, as you build that expertise, you will be able to do it automatically. Now team, what I want to do is, hey, I don't want to perform anything on this. I want to go to the next one called page. So to do that, all I will do is dot start typing page, and you'll see that page is automatically here. Either you select this or you write the whole code. Now you open brackets again. And now page 1 comes up automatically. Why? Like browser IE, only one object of the type page in here. And that's why that comes up. Now I can close that bracket. Dot. What is next? I want web edit. This is a web edit field. And here's the name. So let's start to write web edit. Okay. Open brackets. Now why do I see 4 items here? Sorry, Tim. Why didn't it pick up one automatically? Reason being, it sees 4 objects of the same type. That is the reason. Now let's start with end miles. Okay, here is the one. So I'm gonna double click on that and dot. Now I said this is the where part. This is the where part for my code. So now what do I want to do? I want to enter text in here. So is there a method called enter text? Do I see enter anywhere? No. What will submit do? Submits a form. Not this. How about toString? Doesn't seem to be the right thing. What is this set? Sets the text inside the edit box. Is this the one? Do I have to every time go through everything and see what each of them does? No. Now you know set does what. Right? Next time when you want to do it, you will learn it automatically. So as you learn each and everything, you get to that mastering of that portion. Okay. Now team, once I say set, it tells me that set in this small image or text, whatever is being shown here, and it says text. Now it tells me that I have to provide text. Okay, the where part is good. The what part is good, but what do you want to put inside that? The value for that. That is what I have to give, and I'm going to say this is 15,000. Alright team, this is very similar to what you would have seen out here. The only difference between these two statements is I have a very large statement out here which does exactly the same thing like the one that I see out here. Okay, my object names are more meaningful. I'm writing the code and I'm practicing to master to write VB script and going forward in that direction. Now that this is done, cool. Now let's try and do the other one a little bit faster. Browser IE, cool, dot page 1 dot, again web edit, because I have to enter into 4 fields. Now start miles. Where did we start? Select that. Dot, which one? We just used one, correct? Set. And let's say we put 10,000 in this. Similarly, I'm doing, hey, why should I type the whole thing over and over again? This is common, so I'll copy this. Actually, till here, this seems to be common. So let's copy this. And now open brackets. I can enter, select gas, dot, set again, and say, what do I want to put into it? Let's say 40 gallons, the amount of gas. Again web edit, the last one, price, dot set, and say $4.5 per gallon. Finally, the same thing again, Why can't I see calculate? Hmm. Why don't I see calculate, team? I see calculate here, but why not here? What could be wrong? And that's where you have to identify, team, and look more closely. Why? Because what is it showing me? All green buttons. Why? Because this is web edit. Then what is my calculate? It is an image. Okay. So I will write web image and open brackets. Do I see anything? No. Why? It is not a web image. Look at the exact thing. It is a image. So delete this and start to write image. Now open brackets. Calculate comes up automatically because the only one. Dot set. I want to write set. Why am I getting set to? Set. I don't see set here. Why? If it is an image, do you think a user can go and enter a text here? No. What do I do then? What will the user typically do? Click on an image, correct? That is what user can do using a keyboard and a mouse on any image. That's the only thing. Click or right click or something like that. Then is there something called as dot click? Hey, there you go. It says clicks the object. So depending on the type of object, what you can do, or rather the technical term called method, changes depending on the type. It's browser, page, web edit, image, and so on. Now, like the others, it is telling me something called as in for integer, which will come to. Then it says optional. Then it says X, and then again another optional and Y and optional and button. What is this? When it says optional, you don't need to provide. These are basically additional inputs which can tell QTP that, hey, do I want to click here in the button? Do I want to click here? Do I want to click here? Do I want to right click? Do I want to left click? Do I want to do a middle click? What is it that I want to perform? That's what it is here. Right now, it is just a basic click. So nothing is needed. Now, what I did, team, is I generated hopefully the code. So everything good? Is it correct? All good? All works well? Can I be sure? Not until you test your code. Write a small piece of code, see if it works correctly, then repeat it. Now let's save this and hit on the run key. What it is doing, I am telling QTP that here is the information that we provided. Now let's execute it. Let's see what happens. Whenever QTP takes time, there is some problem out here. There is some problem, team. That's basically telling QTP that I'm trying to do something I'm not able to do. It's still running, as you see at the right bottom in the green, and on line 4 I see a yellow icon, but it is not moving from there. Why is it not moving? What could be the reason? How long will it wait before it gives out a timeout? And these times are also set within us. It is not, and team, you have to explore. You have to really try and get into it and say, yeah, this could be the reason, or this could be the reason, and so on. All right. That intents of how, where it could be going wrong is important. But now we will get one of our most important lessons of learning QTP. The error messages, hopefully it should come up ideally in 60 seconds. Let's see how long it takes. If it doesn't come up, I know the cause of it, but I want it to come up and tell me what is the reason. It is trying and trying and trying. How much more time will it take before it throws an error? Exactly. I know. Yes, you're right, Manjusha. Hasn't it been more than 60 seconds? Shouldn't take this long. But you know, QTP is just like any other software. So it can fail when we try and do something. But the problem is QTP is trying to execute this code and it's still failing. Why is this failing? In this case, I know the reason. But tomorrow when we come, I want to show errors and tell you how to be able to solve them. The problem is QTP is trying to perform this browser page and all that. The first thing it does, it goes and checks to see if that is present in the object repository. Do you see a browser with the name IE here? Yes, good. In that, do you see a page 1? Yes, good. Do I see a web edit called end miles? Yes, good. All this is good. Then it will try and go and find that in the application. Where is my application? Let's minimize everything. Let's bring up QTP back. Where is my application? My IE is not open. So QTP is trying to do something and my IE is not open. There you go, finally. Here is the message team, and this is the most important aspect of your learning team. How do you identify this issue? How do you know what is going wrong and try and solve that? Mastering this feature is a very, very must needed thing. All right. So team, I'm not going to go further because I'm already at 7:31. Want to stop the session today. Let me leave it out here. I'm going to stop this, save this test and keep it aside so that when we start tomorrow, we will try and start from here. Team, any questions, please? BB script is not case sensitive, and I'll explain this again, Kotari, tomorrow. But basically, what it means is if I read browser with a cap or browser with a small, doesn't matter. But as you go along, you will notice, or like set with the caps or set with a small, doesn't matter. But as you go along, you will start using so many things that in certain areas, especially names of objects or variables and so on, it becomes case sensitive. Then it becomes a problem. So treat it like it is case sensitive. Then you have no issue. Does this course cover SQL? No, it doesn't cover SQL. Okay, SQL is not covered. I'll give you the basics of how databases work, what you can do to work with databases, but more importantly, how can you access this databases from your using database testing concept using QTP. Okay, that's there as part of the videos that you find, but no, I don't cover SQL. Rajiv, you have to send an email, please. If you send an email about all those requests, you will get a response within 24 hours with what you need. Do we need to learn SQL? SQL is a very, very important thing for anyone in the IT industry. There are two things very important, HTML and SQL. For that, just go to w3schools.com. Very, very popular old website that has good tutorials. Go here, just pick up that you want to learn SQL out here. Click on this, go through those few simple tutorials. That's all you need. All right. Any good books on QTP? There are no good books on QTP, honestly, because there are good books on QTP recording, checkpoints, actions, and so on. There's nothing which really talks about VB scripting, frameworks, and all of these things at length. So you don't need any good books. So anything regarding team, the QTP software, the training aspects, or something that is not related with what we did today, please keep it for offline. That's a better place to handle it. You can send an email and one of my team members will respond back within 24 hours to you. Nipindra, Selenium or QTP is a good question. There are lots of factors into which one to choose. Send an email. I will send you some information that will help you to decide. Team, any other questions with what we did today? Because I can start the next session with where we left off and then we can go on. Rajiv, put your other question here. What is the other question? Let's see. I have to go back and hunt through those questions and find out. What is that question? I don't know. Rajiv, put that question again, please. Why can't we use just the logical names to reference the objects since the names we have given are unique? Why do we need to reference it from the parent browser? No, but you're referencing them. I'll explain this, Rajiv. Keep this question for tomorrow when we start. Once we get into the more of the correlation between these steps and this objects here, then it becomes easy. When is the next class? I mean next batch, Manjusha, every month. So please contact me offline on that. I'm working on QTP 10 because that's the one which will be more comfortable for you to practice. Not too many differences in QTP 10 and 11. Web service testing is not part of this, Shanti. Okay, let's see. All right, I think most of the questions are answered. Thank you so much, team. Sorry it took a little bit longer, but hope this could give you a quick overview about QTP as a tool. So we will continue with day 2. Team, are we all okay to do day 2 tomorrow? That's Friday. So that I can complete the basics of things and then move on to some more advanced things next week. I want to try and complete this whole batch before our Christmas vacation start, so that then, you know, Christmas, New Year, we don't have anything much to do around this thing. All right, team. So we will have a session tomorrow then. I will send an updated GoToMeeting invite. It's the same link for every session going forward. You can attend tomorrow's session using the same one. All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll host this video at some place and give you access. Then you can have a look at it. Take care, everyone. Thank you. Bye for now.